Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Building Subtext. I'm your host, Jim Hull. I love great stories, and I built an application, Subtext, to help make more of them. Today, I want to talk about the difference between storytelling and subtext. Clearly, I'm more interested in the second, but I really want to show what the difference is between the two and how stories that have the same exact narrative structure underneath can be completely different. And to help prove my point, I'm going to show how Finding Nemo and Collateral are the same exact story. So let's go. It's important to understand that subtext is trained on the underlying meaning of a story, not the story itself. So what that means is I don't just ingest a whole bunch of screenplays and pre-completed works and then hope for the best. I actually go through and use a narrative framework that interprets what is actually going on underneath, what the author's argument is, what it is that they're trying to get across in the world. And I train on that and then use the magic of large language models and AI to help produce all kinds of storytelling that veers off of the original structure. So you can think of this as the difference between Romeo and Juliet and West Side Story. Underneath, they're the same exact story, although technically West Side Story has a little bit of a difference. It's a very minor difference, but for the most part, it's the same story, and they will admit that it's the same story underneath, but that the storytelling on top is different. Once you have that underlying structure within your model, then you can use that to write any kind of story, and the framework underneath will make sure that all the different random ideas all come together to help communicate the author's argument or premise. That's why subtext is an artist-first framework. It simply doesn't work unless you have some sort of intention. If you don't have some sort of message or something you want to say about the world, then it simply won't work. Let's get to Finding Nemo and Collateral. The first similarity between the two of them, and they're exactly the same. It's not like West Side Story and Romeo and Juliet. Finding Nemo and Collateral are the same exact story. Their first similarity is the main character's pivotal element. Now in subtext, the pivotal element is that part of the narrative that connects character to plot. So in subtext, there's no distinction between character-driven stories or plot-driven stories. They're all the same. They have both. In both Finding Nemo and Collateral, that element is a void, which means both the main characters, their tie between what's going on with them personally and then what's going on in the story, is this motivation to avoid. From the very beginning of Finding Nemo, Marlin is motivated to avoid any kind of potential danger and to protect his son from all harm. And of course, we know why, because of that opening sequence. Well, Max in Collateral, he is coming from the same place. He's always avoiding taking risks. He has this dream of setting up his own limousine company, but he's not going to do anything about it, and he'd prefer just to stay out of harm's way. And what is preventing them from moving on and actually getting some kind of peace is that they'd much rather avoid trouble at any cost, even if it means, in Marlin's case, driving his son to run away, or in Max's case, just remaining a cab driver and not really following through on his dream. So in every great story, there's a counterbalance to that main character pivotal element, and that would be the obstacle character's pivotal element. Once you know what the main character pivotal element is, well, the obstacle character element is tied to it. It's that idea of two sides of the same coin. So if you have one character who's motivated to avoid, then the opposite pivotal element will be pursuit, because those are two sides of the same coin. One side is motivated to avoid, and the other one is motivated to pursue. In Finding Nemo, Dory constantly pushes Marlin towards adventure and facing fears. In Collateral, Vincent is relentlessly pursuing its objectives, pulling Max into situations he would rather avoid. Now, a key component to an obstacle character is that they are an obstacle to the main character continuing to do things the way that they always have. If the obstacle character never showed up in their life, the main character would continue to be driven by their pivotal element. Just because the obstacle character is there, the main character has to deal with it. Their sole purpose in the story is to show them that road less traveled and motivate them to grow out of their limiting personal justifications. In Finding Nemo, point of fact, there is a handoff of the obstacle character role from Nemo to Dory and then back to Nemo. Because the obstacle character is about a perspective, you can actually hand their point of view off to other characters in case they get separated and they have to be somewhere else. And then when they come back together, they can go ahead and carry on the argument. Well, in both cases, Nemo and Vincent, if you look at it, they get really spun up when somebody tells them they can't do something or they get in their way. They don't let people get in their way, no matter what. Nemo's is a little more subtle. Vincent's is very violent. And it's because of that motivation to not let people get in their way that when they see how they can't be free and they can't be out of something, that is a problem to them. Both Nemo and Vincent exhibit a desire to act without constraints. And if somebody gets in their way, well, they're going to shape the environment and fit it to serve their needs and do what it is that they need to do in order to have some sort of control over their life. And so you can see on a grander scale how both of those influential moves would then challenge a main character who avoids risks and doesn't want to deal with any kind of conflict to see the positive aspect of that. So obviously, Vincent is not doing a lot of nice things, but he is successful in what it is that he's doing. And that success is what then pulls Max out of his shell so that then he can go ahead and save the day and presumably go ahead and chase his dream at the end. Same thing with Finding Nemo. Marlin is completely afraid of everything and avoiding it. And by virtue of seeing all the success that his son had, and also seeing it through his son's proxy, Dory, by the end, he says, go ahead and chase your dreams. Because he has come to a place where he's no longer avoiding everything and has found some sort of resolution in chasing after a dream, even if it's someone else's dream. In Subtext, we refer to the work that these obstacle characters are doing in the story as the obstacle character focus and the obstacle character direction. To help me with the preparation of this video, I reached out to Muse and asked if there were any examples from either Finding Nemo or Collateral that showcased the obstacle character focus of free and the direction of control. And this is what Muse came up with. Dory, as the obstacle character, embodies the focus of free through her spontaneous and carefree approach to life. Unlike Marlin, who is cautious and controlled, Dory embraces each moment without worry. This is evident in scenes like when she joyfully interacts with a group of jellyfish, treating it as a fun game despite the potential dangers, thereby challenging Marlin's cautious approach. Her influence on Marlin is a clear example of her direction of control. She constantly challenges Marlin's need to control every situation, pushing him to accept more uncertainty and spontaneity in his life. This is seen when she persuades Marlin to swim through a trench for a shortcut, teaching him to trust in the unknown. And then for Collateral's examples of free and control, Muse wrote, Vincent, the obstacle character in Collateral, demonstrates his focus of free through his methodical, yet detached approach to his assignments. He moves through the city executing his plan with a kind of ruthless freedom, unbound by moral or ethical considerations. This is highlighted during the nightclub scene where Vincent efficiently maneuvers through the crowd to carry out his mission, unfazed by the chaos he creates. Vincent's direction of control is evident in how he manipulates Max's actions throughout the night. He controls the environment and situations to ensure his plan proceeds flawlessly. A key moment is when Vincent forces Max to visit his mother in the hospital, using it as a tactic to keep Max compliant and under his control, further pushing Max to confront his own passive behavior. So you can see how in both cases, they're operating on that same frequency. They're both looking at that lack of freedom or their inability to be free, or the fact that they need things to be freer so they can complete their missions. And then in response to that, they're moving towards more control. And that forces their respective main characters out of their comfort zones. So that's it for a brief insight into the difference between subtext and storytelling. You can see that despite their different genres and settings, Finding Nemo and Collateral are essentially communicating the same argument. Stop running away or avoiding fears, and instead chase after your dreams. One is appropriate for children, and one's more appropriate for adults. So the next time you're watching a film, a television series, or reading a book, try and think about other stories that share the same similar narrative structure underneath. If you're unsure about what's running underneath those different stories, feel free to check out Subtext, where I've gone through and encoded over 500 different unique narrative structures. And just so you know, the argument that I presented between Finding Nemo and Collateral, that's not the only argument that's ever made. There's thousands and thousands of different arguments, each with their own unique narrative structure and unique narrative code. And you can find all of those inside of Subtext. So that's it for this episode. If you have any questions about the difference between storytelling and subtext, or anything else that I've covered in today's video, please leave a comment down below. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.